Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Andrew Yang, and we are going to talk about a proposed policy that I would like Andrew Yang to pick up in order to communicate his ability to defeat Donald Trump. This proposed policy is called the Gentry Bounce. I will define it, and then I'll explain why I think Andrew Yang should adopt this proposed policy that I will be crafting and detailing for you today. All right. Well, I've crafted it, and now I'm going to detail it for you. All right. So let's talk about this. So the reason why we're talking about this today is homelessness, right? So recently in one of my videos, I said that America does not really have a homeless problem. What it has is it has problems with recreational intoxication at a macro level, and it has problems with mental health issues, right? And those second two are absolutely true. And that essentially homelessness is simply a symptom of recreational intoxication. And then specifically, in addition to recreational intoxication, it is also an issue of a symptom of mental health issues that are unresolved, right? Untreated and unresolved, right? So that was my proposal. And I also, as I do many times, I'll say, hey, let me know if I'm wrong, right? And boy, did people let me know. So there was just a few, but there were a few well-crafted comments that were dropped, right on that video, and people were like, oh, you're wrong, right? There is another and my point was that if you don't have mental health issues, if you don't have issues with recreational intoxication, you're almost certainly not going to be homeless, right? And my multiple subscribers jumped right on, and in very detailed manner and in a very succinct manner said, you're wrong, and here's an example why, right? And the biggest one is gentrification, right? So they were saying, hey, gentrification is happening in multiple cities and multiple areas around the United States of America, and you have areas where you have people who have no issues with recreational intoxication, no issues with mental health issues, either one or both, right? And they are homeless, right? Because they can no longer afford to live in the place that they lived last year because the rent is, 50% or double the cost, right? And now these people are living in their car, they're living on the streets, right? And I thought about it, I was like, oh, wow, they're right. Oh, my gosh. The biggest one is San Francisco. So I've been reading this myself for a while now. And actually, I read a lot of articles about this like 3-6 months ago. I haven't really read anything recently about it, right? Probably because a lot of the gentrification news has been displaced by the election news and by impeachment, right? Boy, what a waste of bandwidth for the airways. Reporting on how Donald Trump is absolutely owning the libs again through impeachment. Yay, what a waste, right? Like, look, yeah, impeachment is so ridiculous. They have no hope of impeaching Donald Trump. It's ridiculous. It's such a circus. Anyway, all right, let's stay focused. All right, so here's the issue. So one, I'm going to acknowledge right now I was wrong, right? Gentrification is very much a pattern that is causing homelessness, and that homelessness is completely independent of recreational intoxication and mental health issues, right? So you could be a person who has no mental health issues, no major mental health issues. We all have minor ones, right? And no issues with recreational intoxication, right? And you could be homeless, right? That's absolutely true. I've seen the footage both on YouTube and through major news outlets of people who have, this has happened all over the country, right? It's happened in towns, it's happened in cities, it's happened in metropolises, and in specific areas or into entire towns, entire cities, entire metropolises where gentrification has happened, right? So what is gentrification? Gentrification is when you have an area that the wealthy have absolutely no interest in living in, and then suddenly the wealthy have an interest in living in it, right? And there's signs at that level. And then there are a few wealthy people living in areas where wealthy people generally do not live, right? Or have literally moving into areas where wealthy people don't move into. And then there's a wave of wealthy people. And as soon as the wave of wealthy people arrive, leases and rent and housing prices go way up, right? And so the first thing that happens is rent, right? So like, let's say you own an apartment building, or somebody owns an apartment building, and now there's 1,000 millionaires living in the town, and you were charging, let's say it was $1,200 a month, previously, and now you could easily charge $2,400 a month because there are people here who will pay it, right? So you jack up your rent amount, and now like 20 families in that one apartment building are sleeping in their cars or are on the streets, right? That's gentrification, right? Or houses are worth $180,000, and now they're worth $360,000 a year later, right? And those people who own those houses at 180, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to pocket 180 grand. Done. Here's my house. I'm going to go live somewhere cheaper, right? That's the smoothest form of gentrification. But those people who are renting, that's a real problem, right? And that's real homelessness that is independent of recreational intoxication and mental health issues, right? Now, the reason why that distinction is important is we already acknowledge in America that, and every single candidate has plans for dealing with recreational intoxication and dealing with mental health issues. Of course, Andrew Yang's plans are the best, and some plans are like some people don't have plans. Like Pete Buttigieg, he never had any plans. He just kick the can down the road until people are like, hey, you need to put up some policies. They're like, oh wait, let me get a notepad and scribble down everybody else's policies. Here's mine. That's Pete's. It's ridiculous, right? That's absolutely absurd. He doesn't have a single policy. What does Pete Buttigieg believe in? I don't know. Do you? Who knows? Whatever, right? All right. So this gentrification is very real, right? So how does this get fixed, right? So right now, to my knowledge, I have not seen a policy that Andrew Yang has on this, and I haven't really seen him talk about it. And even if he has a policy on it, gentry ballots is better because it's going to win Trump votes, right? All right, and I think it's a better policy for Americans, and it will be better for people who are gentrified, who are impacted from gentrification, right? Poor people who live in, poor people who live in areas and then are being displaced because wealthy people are moving in, right? All right. So what's gentry bounce, right? So gentry bounce would be a policy that I would want to see Andrew Yang drop, and I'll detail that policy right now. All right, so J. Scott Garibay take on gentrification, and actually capitalism's take on gentrification, right? Gentrification isn't bad in any way. It's great. It's fantastic. We want everywhere to be gentrified, right? Places in America aren't being gentrified because millionaires are moving out of other places and moving to other places. Gentrification is happening because America has more millionaires. America has more millionaires every single day because we're the most baller nation in the world, and we have the best sneakers, the best cars, the best comic books, the best jazz. Everything we do is rock star cool, and we just keep making more and more millionaires, right? America is becoming more and more wealthy overall, right? There's more money in America every day, not less, right? That's our trajectory right now, right? And the reality, so gentrification is happening because we have more millionaires, not because millionaires are moving from one area to another. I'm an evangelical Christian. We talk about problems in church called sheep shifting, right? If you got a family and you take your family of 6 people and you move them from one church to another church, you have not increased the evangelical Christian count, right? You're just going from one church to another. It's sheep shifting, right? We're not talking about sheep shifting here with gentrification, right? What evangelicals want is we want more evangelical Christians, right? We want that other church to get 6 additional evangelical Christians, not move evangelical Christians from one church to another. We don't want sheep shifting, right? Same thing with gentrification. Gentrification is not happening because millionaires are moving from one place to another, right? Millionaires are not abandoning New York or Atlanta or Miami to go live in San Francisco, right? The reason you have this is because you have developers who used to make $100K that now make $1 million a year, right? That's why San Francisco. That's why I think the numbers. There was a shed that sold in San Francisco for $3 million 6 months ago. It's crazy. The gentrification is insane that's happening in San Francisco, right? And it's virtually impossible for it's now impossible for anyone who's poor to live in San Francisco, right? So, gentrification has occurred there, right? So basically, now under capitalism, right? And Andrew Yang is a capitalist. That's why he has my vote. One of the very important reasons why. He's not a socialist. He's not Bernie Sanders, right? Like, yeah, there's a difference, right? There's a huge difference, right? Sickle and hammer, Bernie Sanders, right? He's a socialist, right? You cannot forget that. It's important, right? And Andrew Yang, it's called the freedom dividend for a reason, right? It's not called a breadline for, this is a fundamental difference. Yang is a capitalist, right? All right, so he's for capitalism, right? So under capitalism, you want everywhere to be gentrified, right? We want essentially the poor in America to disappear, right? Middle class and up, right? Like that's where we're heading, right? And we can absolutely be there, right? Because one of the things is, I go to Brooklyn very frequently. I love it. The thing that I love about Brooklyn is billionaires frustrated with millionaires, right? That's what Brooklyn is. Like, there's so much money in Brooklyn, it's ridiculous, right? I can put my bike in front of a coffee shop in Brooklyn, and I don't even need to lock it, right? And the reason why is there's a bike next to it where the cranks and the pedals cost more than my bike. So it's absurd. There's so much money in Brooklyn, it's crazy, right? All right, so the issue is, so basically, gentrification is happening. And we want everywhere to be like this. And the reality is, America should be like Brooklyn, right? Every square inch of America should be worth a fortune. And the reason why is, we are the rock stars of the world. Americans are rock stars of the world. Every other nation is behind us, right? When it comes to politics, when it comes to culture, when it comes to society, we have defeated the world, right? Great Britain, we've defeated your food, right? India, we've thoroughly defeated your politics, right? Society, right? Basically, I would say at Russia, right? America, just fist bumps and hugs and smiles beats frowns and no hugs, right? We defeat the world at politics, culture, and society. We have won, right? And so essentially, America, every square inch of America should become like Brooklyn, just super, super valuable, and only the coolest, richest people in the world live here because everybody else wants to get here, right? And wants to be here, and even just rub their businesses against our businesses, right? That's the way it should be, right? So we want everywhere in America to be gentrified, right? Now, here's the problem, right? When you gentrify, what happens at an apartment building with 20 families in it who are now living in their cars or living on the street? That ain't good, right? We got to handle that, right? So here's the policy, gentry bounce, right? So there are signs when a place is gentrified, right? And so we would look for the signs, right? Are wealthy people starting to look at an area, right? We start dropping in gentry bounce, right? Or the structure for gentry bounce to be applicable in that place, right? Then when wealthy people start moving in, we actually start applying gentry bounce gently at low numbers, right? And I'll tell you exactly what gentry bounce is in a minute. And then when the wave comes in, we gentry bounce everybody, all the poor out, right? All right, and so here, how do you do what is gentry bounce? All right, so gentry bounce is the following. It is first and foremost, it's storage, it's storage, shelter, relocation. Okay, it's that quick, right? So essentially, when gentrification starts to happen and people are starting to not have the space they need, right? Often one of the things is even in that building, that building, 2 or 3 families might join together and live in one apartment, right? Or 2 families might, right? Even if it goes up double, right? And everybody squeezes in, and then they're going to need storage because they have a lot of stuff, right? So gentry bounce would be the government engaging for-profit businesses to supply specifically storage, shelter, relocation, and placement, right? I forgot placement. All right. So first, families would have access to storage, right? So if it was proven that gentrification is starting, that even at the level of the first one where wealthy are looking at your area, you could get storage. You could say, hey, our two families are going to join together in this house or in this apartment, right? And we're living tighter, so we need storage for our stuff, right? And the government would say, okay, great, here's some money, U-Haul, give these people a storage locker, or whatever company supplies storage lockers, right? And the government would pay for 6 months of storage, right? Or actually a full year of storage, right? Then at that point, if even 6 months or a year goes by and those two families are like, we squeeze together, we still, and the price of milk is higher, everything's higher here, we can't live here, we're going to be living in on the streets next week. The government said, no, chill, right? Shelter, right? So, and then essentially those people would be moved out within 20 miles of where they live, right? To an area where, and basically to another apartment building. And the government would say, okay, we got the rent on this apartment for 3 months, right? You're going to be given shelter for 3 months. And during those 3 months, we're going to find a place to relocate you, right? And so we're going to take you from San Francisco, right? Now, actually, we're going to take you from San Francisco and we're going to move you to the heartland, right? And then at that point, the relocation again would be on the government dime, and the government would pay for-profit businesses, and give those businesses, in addition to the pay, they would give them tax breaks for doing this, right? So companies would be economically incented to do this work, right, by the government. Those people would then be relocated, and then they would go through placement service where they would be placed in new jobs, right? And the government would pay for all of this, right? And it will be expensive, right? But this is a much better model, right? Now, I hear you. You're like, hey, why on earth why should we take the poor and put them in a new area, right? Well, here's the reason why. We want all of America to be gentrified. Gentrification is a good thing. It means the wealthy are interested in an area, and they want to make that, and they want the bodega in that area to be the kind of bodega that was started a few months ago by a Harvard dropout who has a lip ring, and that bodega has a sign on front that says bodega, but the O is a 0, right? And the wood on the counter in the bodega is reclaimed barnwood, right? We want the bodega, but it needs to be bodega with the O as a 0, right? Like, and that's the issue, is we want everywhere to be scaled up, right? This is happening in a city very close to me. I used to buy $2 coffee. Now I buy $6 Starbucks. That's gentrification, right? It's a good thing, right? This is who doesn't like cloud macchiatos? Thank you very much, Ariana Grande, right? Like, it's a big deal, right? So that's where we're heading, right? And I can hear you. You're like, oh, no. We need to make sure that the poor can still live in San Francisco. Absolutely not, right? So my take on the reason why we should, so one, you don't need to stop gentrification. You just need to make sure that when people are gentrified, they have an option, right? That they're not sleeping on the street, right? And that's the issue, right? And I think this is a critical difference in what the Democrats believe, right? And the reason why is, for a long time, the Democrats essentially have been saying, let's preserve the poor, right? And that is a bad model, right? We want to get the poor to be middle class. This is the critical difference between Andrew Yang and Elizabeth Warren, right? Andrew Yang wants to take the poor and give them the freedom dividend and lift them to middle class, right? And give them, a little bit of a rocket that will allow them to jump to middle class, right? And whereas Elizabeth Warren she's not focused on poor people. She, in my opinion, she wants poor people to remain poor, and then what she wants to do is take the billionaires and drag them to the poor. That's a fundamental difference, right? And that's my point: is gentry bounce does not preserve the poor, right? It gives the poor an opportunity to be middle class in an area where they can actually live and thrive, right? If you're poor, you're not going to thrive in an area where where millionaire developers are trying to outbid each other for a shed, right? Like, that's not going to work, right? And so, to me, this is a fundamental difference. It's acknowledging that it's specifically acknowledging that that the Democrats should stop preserving the poor, elevate the poor to the middle class, and help them to arrive in places where they can succeed, right? Because there's just really no other model that functionally works, right? Now the last benefit of the Gentry bounce is the Gentry bounce would be incredibly successful as far as attracting Trump voters, right? If Andrew Yang shows to Trump voters that he doesn't want to preserve the poor, he wants to lift the poor to middle class, right? That's incredibly attractive to Trump voters, right? And if he's like, I'm not trying to stop gentrification, I'm just trying to make sure that people who are who are impacted by gentrification are safe and comfortable, right? I've even stone-hearted Republicans can agree with that, right? Like that's a good sound plan. Whereas you're saying, no, we want to make sure that wealthy people can't come into this area. You're never going to get a Trump voter with that kind of approach, right? All that is my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion on the topic, right? And also, if you think I got any of this wrong, on every video I do, I'm ready to be educated, right? I'm changing my stance on homelessness because I was educated by my subscribers. Always, if I say anything wrong, jump down in those comments. Let me know. I'm always willing to learn, and I'm always willing to say I was wrong. And I was wrong on homelessness. I'm fixing it today. This is my new stance. Thanks again for letting me share this with you today. Have a wonderful millennium.